welcome. We need to represent. Where are you? Stay away. I'm just kidding. We're honored today. Representative, would you like to have anything to say to start off this? Ditto. Today, we've got to try to get this budget worked, and we kind of left a few questions for yesterday, but by 3:25, no matter what, we got to report these out tomorrow. So, kind of. So, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Secretary Lovelace regarding the budgets or anything from yesterday? Representative Bloom.
We had a big discussion yesterday about the gates, and you said it was Clay County's responsibility. We had a big discussion about the gates yesterday, and you said it was Clay County's responsibility to keep them up, right? The roads. So
we actually have, I'm sorry, am I on?
Good.
We have 3 different counties we deal with around Milford, and all of the roads that were in the pictures that you saw yesterday were county roads. And so we are not able to do maintenance on those.
If they did do the maintenance, would you open the gates?
We'd have to look, and it'd be an individual by individual basis. You and I visited, the rest of the committee doesn't know this, but we did a survey based on Mr. Sanchez's concerns back in 2019. We started a public information process where we reviewed all the gates, the roads that were open and closed, and got public input on those. And so at the time, when we finished that process and finished with a public meeting, we changed a few of those gates that were open, versus closed. And since then, in fact, we've opened a couple new roads over time, again, based on those public comments. But the gates that are closed right now are closed simply based on road conditions, right, that allow travel or don't, and then also whether or not it's a road that we actually maintain or the county. So what we do is we just go back and review it. If we've requested, our situation is we aren't allowed to do maintenance on those roads, and this county doesn't want us to, because it would put them in jeopardy if we were to not maintain those properly and somebody got injured. It would the liability to the county. So we've told the county, if you abandon those roads, then we will take them over. So we want to have more control of those to provide better access. But so far the county has not agreed. None of the counties have agreed to abandon any of those roads. So that's kind of why we're stuck right now.
The roads you maintain, are the gates open?
No, we invariably, we have a gate at the end of them so the public doesn't drive where they're going to get stuck or get into trouble. The other thing that came out in that survey, a lot of local people, well, a couple, Mr. Sanchez and some others said, nobody likes the way you're maintaining this area, this balance between easily accessible areas, places where you can get right down to the river and the reservoir, versus places that are locked with gates. Nobody likes it. So we employed Fort Hays State to do a scientific survey of the users, thousands of users over the last several years out there, fishermen or anglers and hunters both. And overwhelmingly, they said they like to have some areas off limit, especially for deer hunting and for bird hunting, right? So they aren't disturbed by vehicle access. We did make an adjustment. We fine-tuned, again, based on that public input, to lengthen the summertime season, the warm season, to allow access for those early season teal hunters, right? We could expand that and leave areas open for them. And also in the spring, we expanded earlier for those early spring fishermen that wanted to get a little closer access. And so when we do that, we open those gates. Those are seasonal roads, which you can travel as long as conditions are good. And to just try to provide as much access as possible, but then not conflict. We'd get complaints from the deer hunters and the bird hunters saying, I had the buck of a lifetime coming in and then a vehicle drove down there and scared it away. So they for those seasons, they really prefer, the majority of our users prefer that we have those gates closed. But then when we can open them for the summertime users, we do that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Representative?
Chairman, I have one quick question. I apologize. Um, on page 12, the boating fee fund revenue on the performance measures, it goes from 1.9 down to 1.2 in 2024. And was there a reason for the drop of $700,000? Is that an intentional?
Let's see where you're at.
Page 12. Boating fee fund revenue.
I apologize, I'm not seeing it, but so you're pointing out that it was a drop,
$700,000 over several years.
right?
Luke,
Yes.
can you show him where they're at? Show the Secretary where we're at.
It's number 8.
Number 8 at the
On
bottom
eight.
of the page.
Oh, okay. Do you have any clues? Yeah. So Steve Adams, my budget guru. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Boating fee fund revenue is based solely on boat registrations. So however many boat registrations there are that year is how much revenue accrues to that account. We did see during COVID, just like we saw greatly increased use of the parks, greatly increased use of the state fishing lakes, all of our areas, we saw a much greater increase in boat registrations. So it goes up and down each year. I believe boats are, when you register your boat, when you renew that, it's a 3-year cycle. So you probably see some of that playing out in the revenue stream also. But it's purely dependent on how many people register a boat in the state of Kansas in that year.
I understand that, but my question is that intentional? And is that going to cause you a problem in the fee fund? $700,000 drop over several year period.
Well, it wouldn't be intentional. I think what you're looking at are actuals from past years. So we know it goes up and down in different years. So that's just a factor of it. It's intentional. No, it's just, did you register your boat? Did you sell your boat and you're no longer registering it? Or did you decide you're going to spend your boating time in another state and it's registered there? But it's not intentional. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. So I was kind of said, so if I understand it right, those way you read it is performance measures. So you went way above what you anticipated. It wasn't an actual decline. You're still projecting the 1.2 million. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Our expectation.
Right. That's why I read it. Thank you.
Yeah, COVID was just a remarkable time. People were buying boats that never had one, and registering came right along with that. So we knew there'd be a drop off. We didn't know right where we'd fall.
Any other questions? Let's kind of, if you have any questions, let's start working through the budget for 23. So guys and gals, Luke, do you want to kind of give an overview of this pretty quick?
Mr. Chairman, I can do that. Quick rundown from 2023. For the agency's request is they did have $157,000 all from special revenue funds for law enforcement maintenance software, $100,000 from special revenue funds for utility expenditures. Thank you, Representative. I am on page number 6. Page number 6, starting on item number 2, is the $157,000 from Parks Fee Fund for the law enforcement program, specifically for software expenditures. On the next page, on page 7, Item number 3, $100,000 from, again, Parks Fee Fund for utility expenditures. $140,000 on item number 4 for increased expenditures associated with gasoline and vehicle repairs. Item number 5, $35,000 from Parks Fee Fund for body cameras. And then the all other adjustments, as we spoke about, a lot of that is in salaries and wages as a result of the agency is estimating being able to hire and retain more individuals. And so they are anticipating some increases in salary and wages as a result of that pay plan that was passed during the last session. And then finally, the governor does not recommend any agency supplemental requests. However, she does recommend $300,000 from special revenue funds for body-worn cameras and increased operational expenditures.
Does anybody have any request or anything they'd like to talk about or change in the 23 budget? Representative Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm understanding correctly, on page 7, line item 8, the governor does not recommend any agency supplemental requests, correct? Except for number 7.
Correct. Or go ahead, Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, that is correct. She does not recommend any agency supplementals, but does include an additional $300,000 for the body-worn cameras and increased operational expenditures.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe if the governor doesn't recommend any of that, do we need to give 2, 3, 4, and 5 supplemental requests then? Do we need to honor that?
After we're here, you can vote out, but she doesn't authorize it, and they didn't. She's got her opinion, and you've got yours. So
we can move.
I mean,
We can add to the budget.
you can add. We're working the budget. See if we can add it, whatever you want it to be. Just vote on it.
Well, if I may, we're going to have $300,000 for the cameras, which would cover line item number 5, right? So we don't need an additional line item number 5 then, correct?
It's not additional.
She didn't
Okay.
recommend it. It's not there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When we pass a budget out, it's the governor's recommendation plus anything we add to or take away from.
So is this, what I'm asking, is this the additional then? Is this additional 35,000 on number 5?
If that's what the agency asked for, but the governor, it's not in her budget request.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
that's what we pass
Now,
out,
that's
it's
where
her
I'm at.
budget request, and we
That's
make
where I'm at.
changes to that.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just trying to figure this out myself. So on the body worn cameras, number 7, the governor's recommendation, that's for 300,000. But their supplemental request I'm looking at up here, the agency requests 35,000. Is that a different thing? Is number 5 not the same as number 7? That's what I thought you were asking. I can't figure it.
Who's going to try to solve this for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. So in the governor's budget recommendation, there is a recommendation in there for $300,000 for body-worn cameras and increased operational expenditures. However, I did not see anything in the recommendation that would indicate what, if any, of the agency supplementals were covered by that, or what the breakdown would be between body cameras or increased operational expenditures. It is simply the $300,000 for body cameras and increased operational expenditures, but I'm unable to tie that or identify where that is in relation to any agency request.
Thank you. So if I'm following it right, then what she's putting in her budget for exceeds what they're asking for body cameras, but she's saying for additional increased operational expenditures. So could that additional money then cover some of those other supplemental requests? Because, okay.
I'm not saying that. Just Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the recommendation, it doesn't indicate either way. So some of that could be used for some of those agency supplemental requests for body cameras as well, but it's not clearly delineated or itemized.
Any more thoughts or discussion for the 23 representative?
As I read this, it looks to me like what we have, the request number 3 for 3 and 4 are requests for utility expenses and fuel, which would kind of look like inflationary costs. And if the governor included it in her recommendation on number 7, that would give the agency discretion then to use what they need for cameras, which may not be every single person this year, and to back up the inflated costs of gasoline and utilities, which they've already had to deal with all year. Is that, I see nodding
I think
out here.
she's covered that, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Luke, in the governor's budget request, she's about $6 million over what the agency requested. And I'm assuming, I'm asking for the capital improvements. Looks like about $2.5 million. Is that for that dam repair? Or can you tell me that? I'm on page 11, sorry. You see where I'm at?
Yes, Representative, Mr. Chair, I do. Yeah, I do see where you're at. That is part of it, absolutely. And then on the first page as well, you can, page number 1, you can see clearly that the governor's recommendation is 3.1 million more SGF in that capital improvements. We have operating expenditures and then capital improvements. The federal funds remains the same in the governor's recommendation when compared to for capital improvements when it comes to federal funds. And then you do see about a $300,000 increase from all other funds in there as well for capital improvements. I hope that answers your question, Representative.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, page number 7. When I look at the 24 budget, we're adding 3. Correct. But hear me out for a minute. When I look at the 24 budget, we're adding 3 more FTEs from 23 to 24, correct? That's what this says.
So would that be a carryover or an addition? I talked to the secretary about this. I hope that next year this has a performance-based budget. It cuts down on a lot of questions. And this is kind of an Easter egg hunt, a little bit. But go ahead, Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, what page?
Well, I'm on page 7 right now, line item number 6, or adjustment number 6. Talks about 3 additional FTE positions. Now, I don't know how many. Is that adding? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. You would be correct in that would then carry over into FY 2024. If you notice on page number 9, the agency's revised estimate for 2023 is where we start. So that is the base. And you see that number is 456 FTE as compared to the legislatively approved amount of 453. So in order to answer your question, that would be an additional 3 FTE added to the agency's base budget moving forward.
So again, with number 6, with this fish program, how many vacancies are in that? Are we just?
I believe it was 43, Steve,
But I wrote down 44 vacancies, but
open vacancies.
open vacancies, but I don't know how many vacancies are in the agency's fish program. And that's where these FTEs are supposed to be coming. I mean, do we already have 9 in there? Do we have 10? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Uh, to answer the representative's question, I'm not able to identify how many vacant FTEs the agency has on hand in the fish program right now.
I'm just trying to figure out if they actually need them or not.
Secretary, could you kind of fish this out for us?
Sure. Those 3 positions are what we call permanent term positions. We have funding through a grant for at least, is it 3 years? Yeah. And those positions specifically are to focus on aquatic nuisance species. You all are aware we're getting challenged on all sides with things that are trying to get in the state that affect not only water quality, they affect our fishery populations. Sometimes they affect water use, like zebra mussels. And so those positions are specifically ones that are part of the program to help prevent those species from advancing and affecting the state. Aquatic nuisance species are a huge threat, and we don't have all the threats that everybody in the United States is facing, but we have plenty of them. And a lot of them come by boat from other states. And so these will be inspection services and things to keep them out. Because once they're in, you kind of can't get rid of them. So we got to keep them out.
So the question that I'm following up with Representative on, if your grant's for 3 years,
Yep.
could we sunset these positions in 3 years, or are they going to continue on with the department?
The money goes out after 3 years. If it's a successful program, we'll reapply for more money and try to justify them one way or the other. This is really an experiment to see if it works, has a desired effect. If it's not effective, we won't continue. We just won't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this isn't a problem that just happened overnight. So how many people are in this particular specialized field then? Are there none, or?
We have a person in Emporia that's kind of been a one-man show for a number of years. And so we have one person dealing with aquatic nuisance species. So this greatly expands it to provide this safeguard, the thing we're trying to do, develop inspection services at our key reservoirs, and things that some other states that have more funding have done already. Once we got this funding, we thought this was the best way to invest it to try to prevent those species from advancing.
What is the federal match or funds?
Let me see. Do you remember how much that was for that federal grant?
That one, I believe, I can check on it. I think that one was different than most of them in that it was 100% federal. But
Right.
I'll have to check on it.
Yeah, you're right. We can get back the exact number. It just covers salary and their overhead basically for those 3 positions. No materials or anything else. That's covered by the department.
I think it would, Mr. Chair, I think it would be, for me anyway, maybe not for anybody else, but it'd be a lot easier and more proficient for me if the departments would put down what these federal fund matches are or a percentage. So then we don't have to wrangle through the weeds with this. And it would make, and instead of, and I understand you guys don't know everything about everything, and I respect that. But when we get the answers later, it's already after the fact. We've already voted on stuff. So I think it would be wise and prudent to have the information to see apples and apples so that we actually know what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These 3 new positions, are they classified or non-classified?
Non-classified.
So, and the 3 that were added in 2023, are they also non-classified?
Well, I'm sorry. Those 3 is what I'm talking about. The ones we just added.
No, you're asking for 3 more. In 2022, you had 453 and you had 51 in fish. I'm on page 11, by the way. You had 51 employees in 2022 FTEs. You went to 54 in 2023's budget, which is halfway over now, correct? And then you're going to add 3 more in 2024. So you went from 453 in 2022 to 459 in 2024 if it's approved. I guess my question is, I would like to know how many classified FTEs the agency has, how many non-classified FTEs the agency has, and how many vacancies there are in each one,
Sure, we can,
classified or non-classified.
we can give that breakdown.
Okay.
Sure can.
Representative.
You know, what would really be helpful, and the way I look at it is also separate whether or not they're federally funded or not.
Okay.
Because the whole difference in this program is if it's SGF, it's one consideration, and I think that's what we were driving at. If it's federally funded, and especially federally funded on a short-term program, then separate those.
Mhm.
And the agency and performance measures. Oh, I'm sorry. Stupid me. That way gives us a better idea on how much we control and how much we're controlling, but it's coming in from the feds. Is that
It's a good question. We can easily show that. We are heavily funded. You're aware, we start out with fish and wildlife, fishing and hunting license fees. We use those to leverage the federal money that's tax, basically comes from taxes on fishing and hunting equipment. And so that's really how we fund the lion's share. So all of our positions are largely funded by that across the whole agency and all of our programs too. But we can give you that breakdown in terms of positions and funding also.
and I want to go back for just a second then on the governor. It looks like there was a request for $432,000 of enhancements that were not recommended. Those are 2 through 6 on page 7. Is that right? Is
Correct. The governor
okay.
didn't.
And the governor chose to give you 300,000 of those, and you can choose what you want.
Gives us some flexibility. For instance, one of the things, the supplemental request in number 2, law enforcement software kind of comes and goes. We've been using the same software for decades, and we can no longer maintain it. They can't upgrade it. They can't fix it. And so it's dying. So we have to go to a new type of software. This would put us in the same software that State Highway Patrol uses. So it'd be compatible. It'd be a much better data management system. Frankly, we'll end up saving money. And we got to roll it over anyway because the old one's dying. So that's why we have to do this. And if we get, this is a great way to fund it if we can get support for that. But one way or the other, we've got to change over this new software system, for instance, could be used to help us with that.
But the governor said, here's 300,000, you choose.
Right.
And then it's your decision whether or not you want to give them the latitude of the 300,000, or if you want to specify that the 300,000 should go for these requests that you made.
Right.
Now, the one thing I did notice though, the $400 and some thousand does not include the dollars for the 3 FTE positions in number 6. And I assume all that is, you want the ability to increase the salaries, but the salaries are all coming from federal dollars.
Right. That's
Okay.
why we didn't have to request any. Yeah, it's all
Okay.
federal grant.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad, the IT upgrades, the program upgrades, will there be any state general fund in that anywhere? You don't have any state general fund in this.
It wasn't recommended.
I'm
Right.
sorry?
Right. It wasn't recommended. So the question is state general fund anywhere in here?
In this is 23.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
No, I don't think.
Okay. Nothing. He said.
Okay. And I guess then I'll ask that again in 24.
We'll be ready.
Still on 23. Committee? Questions? Randy or Garber?
I want a clarification, maybe people who've been here longer than me or have a little more knowledge. From what I understand, if we add positions, if they're classified, it's impossible almost to get rid of them. If they're non-classified, then we can come back and say, we're going to take those positions away. Is that correct?
Luke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good question from the representative. There are some positions in statute that are specifically in statute that they have to be classified, and that can be because of certain federal requirements associated with it. And it used to be the majority of state employees initially hired were classified. That changed a number of years ago. Most state employees, when they are hired now, they are hired as unclassified, but there are still some that are in statute, mostly because of federal requirements. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the clarification.
Back on the 23 budget. Questions? Questions before we move on? Thank you. So on the 23 budget, I move that we accept the governor's request on the budget. Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, no. The 23 budget looks like it's passed out. On to 24. I have a couple of questions that were on the 24 budget. So on page 10, number 5, let's see, number 5. Does the governor include this? Does the governor include this in her budget? The purchase of the property?
Mr. Chair, the governor does include that in her budget.
I'd like to make a motion that we not fund the purchase of the Level Wildlife Area. Strike it. So it's been moved and seconded. Those in favor of not purchasing the Level Wildlife Area say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
No.
The yeses seem to have it. Yes, do have it. The next one I have that I'd like to get cleared up is number 7. And there's people here that can help me on this. With this item number 7, does that need to be set aside? Does that need to be voted on in some other committee also? Or is that something that you can just slide through a budget?
Mr. Chairman, to move the law enforcement officers to KPNF, that would require a separate substantive bill. I believe there has been a bill introduced, not by the governor's office yet, but there was a bill introduced by Representative Blex in Financial Institutions and Pensions, House Bill 2198. But it would take that bill or some other substantive bill. It cannot be done just through the budget.
Question for you then. Would it behoove this committee to just set that aside to see what later might happen? And just not put it through the budget? Anybody? Or David or Luke or
Stephen Wood, Legislative Research. Sure, you can set it aside and reconsider it when the legislature comes back for omnibus. You can delete it now and add it back in as part of the funding portion if another bill passes. It's up to this committee.
verbiage I want to try to use on this would be just set this aside and let it go through the works of a bill to be passed out of both chambers.
So that would be review it on this motion.
Well, the motion is,
No, that's what it is. Set it aside.
that's not my motion. My motion is to set this aside and let the bill work its way through the House and Senate as a regular bill. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in doing that, setting it aside and letting it work through, then at what point do we then consider the money that will be needed if those bills do pass and we do make the change? Is that done then in omnibus or, okay?
Stephen with Legislative Research. Yes, when the legislature returns for the veto session for omnibus, our department puts together a memo of all the bills that would need funding that have been passed since the legislature takes its break. So we'd come back and that would, if a bill had passed, we would include that on the list.
Any more discussion? I make a motion that on number 7, we set that aside and let the bill work its way through the House and Senate. And those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That passes. The yeses have it. Let's see. Luke, could you tell me, let's go over this real quick. Can you tell me what the governor's recommendations are on 24?
All of those on page 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, on page number 10, there's a list of all the governor's recommendations, the 600,000 for Lovewell, the 2.5 million SGF for one-time dam repairs, 2.5 million for law enforcement, move to KPNF, $500,000 for parks and trails. Of that amount, roughly 300 and some odd thousand is for capital improvements. The other remaining balance is for operational expenditures. And as you can see, the additional 2 FTE there for parks and trails. Item number 9, the $74,000 special revenue funds and 1 FTE position for a legal assistant. And then item number 10, park operations, $325,000 special revenue funds for increased operational costs. And then similar to 2023, the governor does not recommend any agency enhancement requests. But as discussed in 2023, it is possible that item number 10, the 325, could incorporate some of those items as requested by the agency.
On number 8, I'm going to make a motion that we keep the 500,000 in and remove the 2 FTEs. Discussion.
We have a second.
I know, it's a discussion. Okay.
So I'm just looking at that, and it says that this is to meet the federal grant matching requirements. So by removing those positions, I mean, I know we're keeping the dollars in, but by removing the positions, do we jeopardize any of those funds?
Mary, can you fill us in on that?
My understanding is we weren't obligated to hire people. It's just a matter of practicality. That Flint Hills Trail, for instance, is brand new. We're still trying to develop the western end, 117 miles. We only have a couple of employees that right now have to cover all that. And so this would allow that expansion out from Council Grove to Harrington, basically that part, and actually have employees that can engage with landowners and deal with contractors as we're finishing up that end of the trail. So it's just a matter of practicality for us.
Question to follow up with your question: would any of the other unfilled 40 other employees, would this just go on? If you can't fill 43 of them now, would this go on to 2 more people you can't fill then? That's what I'm concerned about. If we can't fill the jobs we can't now, do we add 2 more positions we can't fill?
Yeah, so a good question. A lot of our positions are in law enforcement. We're kind of handcuffed there because our salaries, we're trying to increase wages to make them competitive. They aren't competitive now, so we're having trouble with applicants. Also, we're trying to get into KPNF retirement because surrounding states all have that. And so our folks, we hire them, we train them, and a couple years later they move to the neighbors. So those positions we can't fill simply because we aren't competitive right now, and we're trying to get there. These parks positions, we're very confident we can fill these if we advertise them, because We know what the market is, and we know people would be attracted to those kind of positions.
One thing that was brought up yesterday, after 350 some odd FTEs, I think Steve said about 120 or 110 would qualify for your
KPNF.
KPNF.
I think it's about 160.
How many?
I think between all three divisions. I think about 160. I think 160 out of 456. About a third.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess my assumption is that 2.5 million is money that they've already put in, or money that needs to go in there so they can be added to that. Money that needs to go into capers. That would fund those 150 people or whatever.
There's an annual fee, but initially to get in, there's a higher fee when you first start, and that helps cover that. You're right.
Back on the two FTEs. Any questions? Curtis?
I was just going to follow up because I had made a note yesterday that 44 vacancies, 27 of them were law enforcement requiring certification. So like they're huge vacancies, you know, I guess those skills aren't necessarily transferable. Like you wouldn't hire a law enforcement person to do the trails work. Well, that's true.
Number 8 on the parks and trails, the two FTE positions with the $500,000. How much of the two FTE positions is the 500,000? I assume that if we're not giving you the positions, if you don't have the positions from somewhere else, you won't use the 500,000.
Well, we still need to build the trail, right? We just stretch our people thinner, is what we do.
Is this for the construction?
Right, for that. Right now, we're working on different portions, but we just got a federal grant, and that's going to enable us to buy materials and things. We still got to manage those contracts, and we have a lot of conversations with landowners. You know, no surprise to you all. They're our neighbors, so we still, that $500,000 still would be well used on our trails projects. It's easier to preserve our people and keep them happy and healthy if we don't overload them too much. And that's what we've been faced with. The Flint Hills Trail has been such a remarkable project, and economic development for all those small towns through there. Mine's one of them, Linden. But we've stretched our people way thin. We just have.
So the two FTEs are not law enforcement. Therefore, I'll call it construction workers or
no, they'd be parks. So they'd be supervising portions of the trail.
Supervising portions.
Yeah. As we have contractors there, and
do you have vacancies in that area of the department?
We do have vacancies, but we are pretty good at filling those in parks divisions. But yeah, so we don't have a big bunch of vacancies like we have in law enforcement. It's not the same.
Thank you. I have a request to staff. You made the comment a couple times that you're losing law enforcement. Could staff put together what you're paying for law enforcement and start collecting it too, so it can be presented to the full committee? Not only from this agency, but from the other agencies, so we can have some comparison, because this has come up with Highway Patrol, several of the other agencies. So if somewhere in research you can start collecting this and present it to full committee. Thank you.
We can help you with that because we've got a lot of those numbers, so we're glad to share them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification, make sure I'm understanding the request correctly. The request is to identify the spend from all state agencies who have uniform officers. So that would be a total spend for Wildlife and Parks uniformed officers, total spend for KHP uniformed officers. Am I understanding the request correctly? I'm clear on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As opposed to saying uniformed, you say certified law enforcement officers. That's a clear split. So that might help you.
Mr. Chair.
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
Well, I think Joe did have a
Okay.
question. My question is.
We've kind of got something setting out there right now, but go ahead. No, you got
Joe,
you
have
got
a
it.
question.
Representative.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Lovelace, please, or Secretary?
Yes, sir.
Doing a little figuring, and I think you said it was 150 miles of trail. That trail is going to be here 175, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
about $3,300 a mile for putting it in and maintenance. That's a vacant railroad
Right.
track,
Right.
and that included the salary. If I understood the chairman right, if he approves that without the full two employees, could you not give some raises to those other people with some of that money to enhance them to get you more people hired?
Yeah. We're working on a request right now because those officers are below the regional averages as we work with Department of Administration on those. And so we're trying to increase those right now. We're actually in those conversations in order to be competitive, to your point.
So the other question I had is, of the other 40 some vacant, is that salary money accumulating, or what do you use that for?
Oh, actually, yeah, it is. So those vacancies, well, we'd like to fill them as we're trying to move forward on things like the software we have to add. We use the money we save in that spot, just like you would in your home, right? If you don't have to spend it on one thing, you put it in the next higher priority. And so we are, I hate to say it, but we're able to do some things that we've needed to do because of those vacancies. So we are using that money. So over time, it's this dance, trying to fill those positions so we don't wear our people out. We have appropriate coverage across the state, but still trying to get things like this software upgrade made, body cameras that we just have to have. So those kind of things done also.
But then my question would be, if that money was approved for salaries or deal, you use it for something else. I know on some of our budgets that we work on townships, salary budget money has to be used on that, can't be used for anything else. So you can do that.
Yeah, those budgets, it's just like your family budget, right?
Okay.
We've got it all.
All right, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Luke, would you feel, or where we're at here, we've got, go ahead, more discussion. Okay, go ahead.
My question is for you, Mr. Chair. I've been watching this year. Everybody's asking about FTEs. One year we ask about cars. One year we ask about FTEs. One year we, concentrate on different areas of budgets, and that's important. But I'm trying to figure out what the gain is by eliminating those FTEs. What do we really gain since this is all a fee-funded and special revenue agency budget? If we need to build the trails, what are we gaining by not providing the people to do the work? I don't understand. I mean, I understand the shrinkage and, money in the budget that you can spend different ways, but I don't know what we're gaining by trying to build 117 miles of trail that we passed years ago. Years ago. Dave Baker brought that, right? Years ago. And we passed it. It takes a long time to do these things, and I just don't know what we're gaining. And we have a lot of community buy-in, especially on that trail. All these little towns are just so excited to have this trail, and they want it. And it's going to improve their visibility and their marketing and their community development, and it's going to be so good for them. They really were excited about it, and now we're trying to cut two people that were going to build it. I don't understand. I'm so sorry, but it doesn't make sense to me. What do we gain, please?
Okay. So where I was headed with that was, as he just said, they have FTEs that they aren't able to fill the jobs now. It's silly to put two more on the shelf that they can't fill. And as far as the trail, there's been millions of dollars allocated to get this trail through since we've been here. And it's a long trail. I mean, it's Kansas has some of probably the most trails of any state in the country. And he's got, if I'm understanding this right, there's $500,000 there to kind of help get the job done. And just putting 2 more jobs on the shelf you can't fill now, it's easy just to, uh, yeah, yeah. And maybe, and I'm just saying this, it's maybe if, maybe you're a little heavy in law enforcement. You know, it seems like a lot of law enforcement.
Vacancies, yeah.
Well, whatever. But it's up to discussion. It's up to the vote. So I'm listening to anything. Go ahead, Representative Curtis.
Well, I just, I guess I'm following along on what Representative Carlin is talking about. I just worry about the capacity. Like, there's no reason for us to appropriate money. And I mean, we will realize tremendous benefit by building out these trails. We're going to bring more people to our state to enjoy, and that will create more economic activity. And so I worry about capacity. We have the money there, but we also have to have the people to do the work. And from what I understand, for the most part, they're able to fill those positions. They have a lot of turnover, probably because of the salary and everything else, just like everybody. You're right. So they're able to fill those positions. The positions that they're really struggling to fill are the certified law enforcement positions. So that's a whole nother issue. And we're seeing that across a whole bunch of agencies. But I worry about us appropriating money and then not giving them the capacity to really do what we're charging them to do. And if they say they need these additional 2 people to build out this trail, I guess I believe that. And so I want to support that.
Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe Luke or somebody else can answer this question. How much federal money, what is the federal grant with this? How much money is promised there? And I guess while we're thinking about that answer, what is the estimated time to get this finished? I understand that it's a lengthy process, but how much money are we going to spend on this year after year after year after year? Open-ended question, I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, to answer your question, I cannot speak to what that federal match would be or how much that is. I'm not sure if the agency has that information. I'm seeing some nods.
Secretary?
So the last phase of the trail, we just got a grant last fall that should enable us to finish the rest of that trail clear out to Harrington. $25 million grant. And we have, I think, 7 years to spend that. So it takes a while to do all that work. The trail's part of it, but you all have been on that trail. It's nothing fancy. It's not paved or anything, but a lot of the expense are these bridges. These bridges that have been abandoned are just very expensive to build safely. And we just spent about $6 million over by Ottawa on a crossing of the railroad. And that's extremely expensive. So yeah, that's the money we have. We'll spend it over about 7 years. And then we expect to be completed this stretch from Osawatomie to Harrington at that point. I should point out, it's not all just in that last segment from Council Grove to Harrington. We have portions that we kind of made serviceable, but really weren't long-term fixes. And so we've got to go back to a couple components along that stretch, but east of Council Grove, that we need to go back and make better. They just aren't permanent fixes. But that should conclude the major construction on the trail, and that includes fencing on both sides, right? So users know you can't just wander off into that farm field or that hay meadow. Exactly right. Right. So yeah, the right of ways were an important part of that, right? That's being a good neighbor with the county and all that, right? So that's important. And you'll notice too, at every crossing there's bollards. That's so vehicles can't drive down there because we aren't trying to create mischief. What we find, this is a neat part of that trail, is initially homeowners who had the trail for 20 years in their backyard when the railroad wasn't using it, they were saying, boy, if you let the public in here, there's going to be all kind of vandalism, but the result's been exactly the opposite. There was some mischief by usually local youth when they could get up and down that trail. Once we installed those bollards and had use by the public, things have gotten a lot better. And so they find that trail users to be good neighbors, and that's worked out really well.
Thank you. Thank you for talking about that, because that was one of the things that took a long time. And it so much, we build trails in Manhattan, and I was mayor, and I've been through this, and all the things that you have to do with the public, it takes time, understanding, community building, relationship building. That was what Representative Baker was so good about, was building that trust and unifying these communities. And it's just been, to me, it's been a real interesting project to see the way the communities came together and supported each other. And we don't want to lose that because of something that we think we might gain. And I just like, that's why I made that question. There's been so much invested already, and we just need to keep plugging along. Thank you,
I
Mr.
might
Chair.
point out we did have one complaint by an elderly woman, a landowner just east of Council Grove. When we went through to put up the fencing on both sides, she complained because she didn't want to create a barrier. She was enjoying visiting with the people going up and down the trail. And she said they won't visit with me anymore if they can't wander off. She used to sit on her back porch and engage people as they go by. So that was a complaint we had.
Representative Garber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to beat this FTE thing to death, I think. But on page 11, it lists all of your FTEs and what area of wildlife and parks they're in. I'm sure most of these are probably set by statute. But like in parks, you have 116 FTEs at this time. You're wanting to add 2 more. Are all those 116 filled at this time?
Yeah, that they are, as you guys understand. We do have movement of people coming and going, but we are very aggressive when we have a vacancy in reposting it. We have lots of applicants, so we typically keep very full in the Parks Division. Not the same in some of the others.
So, and if you hire somebody in fish or education or whatever, you can't put them into that position of taking care of that.
Right. We encourage basically people in our agency to move between divisions. We think that's healthy, share information and all that. Typically, if you're a fish biologist, that's what you want to do, and so we don't see a lot of that movement, but they are always available to move.
Thank you.
Representative Snyder.
Thank you. I think we had a real good discussion on this whole thing, and it all seems to be stemming on the 2 FTEs. Maybe to help answer some of those questions, I've had experience in building roads, and I built some for wildlife and parks. If we assume this project, like I said, it's $3,300 per mile, roughly. That gives them the opportunity to hire the contractor to supervise the job if they can't hire employees. And this would give them that money of the full grant for the project to hire a contractor. And like they do a lot of the situations, the contractor is responsible from start to finish. And then the project's done. So that gives them, if you can't hire employees, the contractor is going to hire employees. Somebody's going to be supervising that job, and they can supervise it from start to finish without the 2 additional employees until they get it done. And by that time, you might be able to hire some, right? Would I not be correct? Because every project you ever do, the contractor is usually responsible for from start to finish.
Right. That's an approach we could take.
Well, I'm just going by KDOT because they hire an inspector to sit in a truck and do nothing but watch. And what it usually does is everybody in my district complains that he sits in a truck and does nothing. He doesn't tell them what to do. He just sits there and watches them. And they said we could use that money to do more things than having them sitting there in a pickup running with the air conditioner on and watching. I'm just trying to be practical here. And I'm sure you guys use your money the best, but if you can't hire somebody, they can hire the contractor that's going to do this to build the project. So it is done like the previous representative said. We want to get it done. We're trying to get it done. We're trying to give you every possible help that you can do. And you could still hire them with that project. You don't have to have permission to hire them, do you?
Right. We need to get permission for more FTEs. But the only difference would be we expect a lot out of those employees, both to interface with contractors, know what our standards are, as well as interface with the public, do public relations all along there, which is very important to us. Give hold public meetings and all the things that go along with that. So it might be a stretch to expect a contract employee to do that breadth of things. And of course, it allows us to, if we need an extra person in a location for a couple of days, we can shift them around. Couldn't do that so much with a contract employee, but that's an option. It wouldn't be our first choice, but if we have to, that's what we would live with.
I would agree it wouldn't be your first choice if you could hire 45 people. I'm just saying.
We can hire those parks employees though.
Yes.
It's a highly desirable position, so we can
Thank
find
you.
those folks.
Right,
Thank you.
I think Luke's got a little bit insight here. Luke, kind of break that down for us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As we're discussing item number 8, which is the $500,000, as I noted, some of that is for capital improvements and others is for the salaries and wages, which would include fringe benefits and some other costs. In the capital improvements section, which is on page 29, the total recommendation is for $500,000. The capital improvements part of that is $364,841. So when we take that $500,000 and deduct the capital improvements part, that leaves the other operating expenditures for this item at $135,159. And so that could be used for salaries and wages, as I say, fringe benefit rates, and any other operational expenditures.
Pointed that representative just to show them what two FTEs. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no further questions, I'd like to move my second.
Francis, we've been talking for quite a while.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page. Okay.
So the motion that I laid out was on number 8. And by doing this, that we're rewarding the 500,000. They can do whatever they want with, and that's not saying it's just their money. We're just not saying we're not in my motion. We're not including 2 FTEs, but the 500,000 is still there, right, Luke?
Mr. Chairman, as I understand the motion, this motion would only delete FTEs and leave funding.
Funding would still be 500,000.
Correct. That's my understanding.
Anyway, those in favor of that motion say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
No.
The yeses seem to have it. The yeses do have it.
Okay.
So on number 9, Secretary, could you tell the committee how many legal attorneys you have? Or how many did this department have?
Sorry. Tell me.
Number 9.
Yep.
How many attorneys do you currently have at your disposal?
We have 2 attorneys currently.
Legal assistants, I'm sorry.
And this would be, we have a part-time person, a student from Washburn who works part-time to help us with paperwork. This would be, our hope for this was a paralegal, somebody who had some experience, particularly to help us. Getting regulations through has become much more challenging. And so this person would help us with that, the paperwork and the process, and become kind of an expert in that to help navigate that. So
Maybe if if someone retires, they could move up.
Well, they wouldn't be an attorney per se, but you guys know, like I do, sometimes these people develop a level of expertise that is remarkable, right? So sometimes they grow into, to where you don't need somebody with a JD degree. So thank you.
Back on the 24 budget. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Secretary.
I think it's time to make a motion to pass the budget out as amended.
Any discussion? Oh, we have one thing to do. Yeah. David, explain what we're going to try to do here now. Luke, pass these out, please. Yeah. It's coming. Let me read yours.
Oh, what are you doing?
I'm trying to make some money for him. He's got here. Let me have one. I didn't have one. I thought I did.
You should have told them to have a motion. I would never have done that. Didn't know you had a bill.
Proviso. So, David, kind of go through this proviso, and then if they have any questions, they can either ask you or me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the proviso before you for fiscal year 2024, this would just be requiring the Department of Wildlife and Parks during fiscal 24 to make expenditures to make available at least 10,000 unused resident firearm deer permits for the non-resident draw pool for the 2023 regular firearm deer season that would take place. It's late November, early December of 2023. So just tell the agency, spend money to make these permits, these tags available.
So, as you can, oh, sorry. Any questions for David?
Are these doe tags, buck tags? What would they be?
Yeah, it'd be anything that'd be available on that.
Would normally, just like a resident would normally get.
Yeah, be the non-resident tag, except now to put it into the non-resident pool.
So we're taking, let me make sure I'm reading this right. You're trying to take 10,000 unused resident firearm deer permits. So like people who live in Kansas.
Look on the last page of your handout. This is from 2010. There was 150,197 issued. 2021 there was 124,900. They're just sitting there. There's 25,000 tags. They're down 25,000 tags in resident hunting. And this always gives the secretary the permission if residents kick up or something. But what this is trying to do is we know we want the deer numbers are growing. You can see on your other handout that from KDOT there was 19,840 crashes. 12 fatalities. The deer are being hit anyway. What this will do for Kansas and the department, it'll generate almost $6 million for the department. And tourism, got the numbers from tourism. The average hunter coming into Kansas will spend about $1,200 on their trip. And that's about 12 million. So in a period of 12 days, this is all this is good for. 12 days of rifle season. We can put $18 million in the state of Kansas. And that's all it's about. Questions?
I'm sorry, this is really foreign territory for me, so I'm not sure I'm going to totally understand. this, but I imagine there's somebody responsible for managing our deer herd in the state and figuring out that balance between hunting license and our deer herd. And so,
I'm sure they are,
okay.
and we're going to get to that, Representative.
That's a good question. According to the highway, 20,000 deer accidents happen, 20,000 deer are killed that are reported. That doesn't include all the ones that aren't. What the chairman's trying to do is take 10,000 of those that are laying on the highway dead and let somebody shoot them and bring money into Kansas, which will generate $6 million for the wildlife and parks, $12 million for tourism. 10,000 people coming in from out of state are going to do, they might even walk on all these trails that we're building, so we're going to create revenue because if you drive much on the highways, no matter where you drive, you see dead deer laying all over. And KDOT has to go pick them up and dispose of them. Let's put them in packing houses. Let's put them in beef sticks and stuff. And I think this is a really good idea on a separate way to help control the 20,000 on the road.
So why is it that we have so many resident hunting permits that aren't being utilized? Can I ask the secretary?
Yeah, thank you for asking. First, to the point about the abundance of deer in Kansas, we have about 20 different units around the state that we manage based on all the metrics you're talking about: harvest, deer, vehicle accidents, all those kind of things. And so it's reasonably finely tuned. Importantly, when you sell a buck tag to a non-resident, nobody travels, or very, very, very few people travel to Kansas, spend thousands of dollars to come and shoot a doe. And hunting does, harvesting does, is the way you control the population. You don't control it by bucks, because bucks will mate with multiple does. And so the conversations I've been having with people who want to increase the number of buck permits, which is essentially what this would do, increase our numbers, which are very generous. About 24% of our permits go to non-residents, higher than any other states around here, and certainly higher than any other trophy states, which we are. It would cause a couple bad things would happen. First, it would take that focus away from does. We're trying to encourage more people to come and harvest does. Secondly, I was just in the Senate Ag and Natural Resources. They invited me to come and talk about complaints they've been getting about lack of public resident access to hunting areas, right? That's why we were proposing to add that Lovewell area. We have a big walk-in program. We're trying to, people almost universally in Kansas, number one complaint we get is, I can't hunt the places I used to be able to hunt. What's driving that is non-resident tags. And so we believe this proposal would exacerbate that. And the way it works is this: if you own land and have deer on it, that makes it a very valuable commodity. You have lots of people who will pay you from out of state to come in and hunt on your land. And so that can be very lucrative. So what that's caused outfitters to do, though, is go around and lease up land all around, because, again, they can bring in non-resident hunters and make a lot of money. That land is no longer available as it was years ago. We don't begrudge any landowner for making the money they can off their land. We have no complaints about that. But as we add non-resident hunters, it just adds fuel to that fire to lease up more ground, make it less available to residents. And we're afraid, because we're getting a lot of pushback from residents right now. You see those numbers go down because they don't feel like they have places to hunt. So we're trying to figure out a way to balance that out. We feel like adding more non-resident tags wouldn't help us manage the deer population at all, and would further drive a wedge between guides and outfitters and our resident hunters who are having trouble finding places to hunt.
And so on the permits, do you get a permit to hunt for a specific, like for a doe or for a buck?
If you're a resident, your permit allows you to hunt either or. In the same way for a non-resident, but Non-residents harvest very, very few doe. When they come in fact, they automatically get that a doe permit in addition to that first permit. When they come in, they hardly ever shoot does because they're here to shoot their trophy Kansas, whitetail, basically.
And tell me again the percent. 24% of our permits go to non-residents, and that's higher than other states.
Oh, much higher, much higher. Iowa, the closest other trophy state to us, has about 5% that they give to non-residents. So we're much higher. We feel like we're very generous already.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Comments? Representative, well, Mr. Representative Bloom then. Okay.
So what's the solution I mean, you're the top dog. What's the solution to taking care of these does? That's where all the problems coming from.
Right.
They're killing people. I mean, they're eating all of our cattle feed. They're destroying our crops,
Right.
and we're supplying all of that.
Right. It's been exacerbated because of the number. If you lease ground, spend a lot of money to lease it to have people come in and shoot their buck of a lifetime. The problem with that is there's no other hunting typically allowed on that ground. So the does that would have been taken in the past, now nobody wants to run the risk that I'm going to come in and shoot that doe and scare off that buck of a lifetime they're trying to hunt. So typically it's off limits. So that's what's caused this increase in does. So we're trying to figure out a way. I was just talking with Chairman Corbett the other week about a way to, and our staff too, about how to increase that January season, basically the doe season, antlerless season, and figure out a way to give residents access to that ground that's been leased and kind of off limits, but to ask, would you be willing maybe to have, we pay you part of our walk-in program, like we do for upland and all that kind of stuff, pay you during that January season to open it up for antlerless deer. So that way residents could come in, harvest some does, which is what we're hoping. Also kind of break down that barrier, this us versus them thing that's developing between leased land and resident permits. And so that's one of our solutions. But we allow in southeastern Kansas, where we have way too many does, we are trying to do everything we can to incentivize that. We're talking that January season, maybe have a use permit for almost nothing, $5 or something. So we're trying to figure out ways to add fuel to that fire so people harvest more does.
So basically, outfitters started the problem.
I would say we started the problem by having a trophy deer population, and that attracts money, and people want to make money off of that resource, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that at all, but we are such a destination state. I talk to hunters who are putting in for tags in Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, and they may put in 20 or 30 years. I mean, basically once in a lifetime, you'll get drawn for a deer there. Here, you have about a 3 out of 4 years chance that you're going to draw in Kansas because of that high number of non-resident tags we offer. So everybody's coming to Kansas. Our demand has gone up about 11 or 12% each of the last 3 years, right? So demand by these non-residents to come to Kansas is increasing. We really don't want to increase the number of permits because that would just add fuel to that fire. And that's why we're concerned about that. The last thing I might mention is we're trying to maintain a trophy deer herd. We are the envy of almost everybody else in the United States. If we get greedy, we've seen this happen in Illinois already, where they basically expanded because there was so much money in deer that they destroyed their herd. Now they're just an average deer population. If we do that in Kansas, then we will reduce the value to all these landowners who are benefiting from that right now. So it behooves us to maintain that trophy deer population. That keeps putting money in everybody's pocket. And if we get too greedy, we're afraid they'll decline like they have in other states. I talked to an outfitter up north of Wakefield, and he was hunting there because he used to hunt in Illinois, and the quality of deer dropped. There's no longer demand, so he moved to Kansas. Right, so now he's leased up land. He's inviting non-resident hunters to come in. If we decimate him here, he'll move on to the next state. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it did literally just dawn on me during this discussion that out-of-state people being able to get this tag for an either or The out-of-state people that are going to come in aren't going to come in and shoot a doe. I'm sorry. That's not what they're going to do. And so we're not affecting, or we're not addressing the doe situation, I think. And I would entertain, ways to incentivize people to shoot does in January or whatever. But we need to keep those bucks. We need to keep that population. And the dead deer that I've seen along the road, and you do see a lot of them, are mostly does. I mean, I've never seen, is that not true? Well, up in our neck of the woods, it's most, that's true. The population is different across the state. But yeah, during the rut, anything's fair game because of all the stuff that's going on. But yeah, I just feel like maybe we need to focus more on the doe population. And so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the more we talk about this, the more it sounds familiar. So we've seen this legislation before, right? In
The idea
past.
of trying to allow more non-residents to come in and hunt in various forms.
So I just did a quick search. So House Bill 2079, I don't know where that's been at, but are you familiar with that? House Bill 20.
I am.
So is that the same?
That's
Is
a
it
little
different?
different. That would have, and the chairman understands that as well or better than I do. Resident hunters, right?
Right, and so on.
Gotcha.
This has nothing to do with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's kind of an interesting conversation here. We had all kinds, but to say 19 fatalities is okay to create a trophy buck state a year, I have a problem with that. And the people that think that hunting is more important than safety, I have a problem with that. But going back to owning $600,000 for that, if you could rent 6,000 acres for 10 years, do you think you could increase hunting in Kansas? And if Wildlife and Parks leased 6,000 acres, do you think you could increase hunting? And if you did, if you took that money from 240 acres and put it into 6,000 acres for 10 years at the same price, you don't think you could increase state residents hunting for does? I believe you could. But I'm almost appalled when legislators sit here and say trophy bucks are worth more than one person's life in the state. Any business that had 20 accidents in 1 year, they would be broke. The liability would be unbelievable to maintain. Unless you've had a family member or person or friends killed in an accident, and in the last 12 to 14 years, I'm guessing that number is close to 1,000 people already. And we still been fighting deer accidents, and I'm all for this. I know you guys do a good job to manage it, but when we talk about trying to get out-of-state hunters in, that's good. But I don't have any trouble getting out-of-state people to come hunt does. They want to come because they want to meet. Other states have hunters feeding the hungry and promote these. But I agree. I think this is good, whether it's a buck or doe or either species, however you'd want to do it. This is another tool to give you more tags to be able to sell. And if killing a couple extra bucks keeps somebody from getting a trophy buck, I'm all for it, because we closed 65 county state fairs down because of amusement park rides. And that one fatality, as tragic as it was, we did that. But when we sit here and say we're going to make this the buck capital of the United States with 20 to 30 people's lives, I have a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brian. And you guys did. You did a great job in my 3 counties was the highest accident rates in the state of Kansas, Sedgwick, Reno, and Kingman. And you did a great job increasing the does. And we did that, and we dropped our accidents, but we're still number 1 in the state of Kansas with deer accidents, over 2 a day, almost average. Thank you.
As you've told me at one time, for those who could buy, who anybody that's a resident that could qualify could get a deer tag for firearm season, correct?
Correct.
So for those of you who are sitting here, when you talk about resource, if they went back and sold another 40,000 resident deer permits, we're not worried about species then. And what all this is about is, and I know that they say that people come from out of state don't shoot does. I think some of them do. You know what I'm saying? And the bottom line to this, on the far, other than just the safety part of this, there's not a landowner in this state. They have two choices. You can increase your habitat and welcome some people in from out of state, or you can get the bulldozer out and tear out your habitat, and then after a while, nobody comes. There's over 345 million acres of farm ground in Kansas. You ain't like you're going to step on someone. I mean, and everybody in this room is territorial, including myself. So, Representative Ozer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Cywert. I apologize.
Thank you, and I understand, Representative Cywert, what you're talking about with fatalities, but, just think what you're saying. The reason there's a fatality is because some animal comes in front of a car on the highway. It has no idea what laws we've passed. I mean, it's accident, and I hate it. I'm afraid to drive. I remember when Sharon Schwartz came in one morning after hitting a deer at 5 a.m, coming in from your neighborhood, and I remember my daughter-in-law down by Emporia hit a deer, couldn't leave. It was midnight. It's terrible, but it's animal instinct. It's wanting to get from one place to another, and it has nothing to do with our laws. But we can reduce our population, but the way to do that is through more deer does being eliminated, and that's the way to do it. So I don't understand. I wonder, Mr. Chairman, would you be at all interested in revising your motion to make this for doe permits?
I'm going to move my motion when you're through speaking.
I would suggest that we make this for doe permits, and I would make that as a substitute motion.
So,
Aye.
all in favor, raise your hand. We are. Anything else? Want to do this committee?
No, you guys have that. I just have something for legislative research. I would like to have them do.
Hear a motion pass that 24 million.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go back before the vote here to clarify the actions that have been taken by the committee. 2023 passed out Governor's recommendation. 2024 currently striking the purchase of land for the Lovewell property, striking the KP&F item with language to review, waiting for legislation to pass regarding that, deleting the 2 FTE positions and trails, and then the recommended proviso for specifically 10,000 doe permits for non-residents.
I have one more motion to make. If your motion has passed, My, my, my substitute motion would be this, that I would urge the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks to sell these doe permits for landowner price to the non-residents, because they're not gonna pay $600 to shoot a doe. 20, Lisa, what, $25, $27?
I second that motion.
Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, discussion.
Discussion, Henry, sorry.
You made the comment, a substitute motion.
Or where am I at? Is the real motion? Okay,
It's a new motion.
okay, before we pass the budget out. Luke, are we on anywhere near sound ground yet?
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, you made the motion for those doe permits to be sold at the state landowner price. And so although I don't think we've had a vote on that.
We have.
We did? Okay.
Let's do it again. We've had a second, right, Representative Curtis, on that motion?
I second.
You seconded. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes. Yes, it's happened.
Okay, now we need a motion to move the budget out.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the 2024 budget for Wildlife and Parks as amended.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I dare